Hey guys, welcome back to another whiteboard chat, and today we are going to talk about a really hot topic, and that is semaglutide. First off, the goal of this video is not to tell anyone whether or not they should take it. It is a pharmaceutical. You should talk to a physician or somebody that can prescribe it. However, a lot of people are using it. A lot of people are jumping on the bandwagon like any other drug that might seem like a free lunch. Their friend took it, or they're working with a coach that's giving it to them, or whatever it might be. And I'm not saying that the use of it is necessarily right or wrong, probably depends on the context, but you should understand what you're consuming and how it works, at least on a basic level, especially something as powerful as this. All right, so to my knowledge, I think it was FDA approved around 2017 or 18 or somewhere thereabouts. It's been around a little bit, not long, a little bit. It has been used in treatment of type 2 diabetes and obesity. Very expensive, so it's probably not something that a lot of doctors are just handing out to people. You know, insurance, all those things get tricky. Nonetheless, it's essentially, or it is, a GLP-1 receptor agonist. So GLP-1 is glucagon-like peptide 1. If you don't know what glucagon is, you probably should, so you probably look that up. It mimics the action of glucagon-like peptide, okay? You take it and you get essentially a heightened response. You're gonna have your own GLP-1 production that you would normally have, and this is gonna give you an increased response, all right? So it's acting on those receptors, right? So what does it do? It does quite a few things. I mean, a lot of the effects are obviously as a result of acting on those receptors, but you secrete GLP-1 in response to food. So we already make this. It's an endogenous substance, right? But you can take it exogenously, obviously, or you can take an agonist of it exogenously. So when you consume food, it's released, and you have a few different primary things that go on based on the target organ. All right, what happens? Decrease in appetite. This would be more at the brain level, right? Pancreas stimulates secretion of insulin, also suppresses glucagon secretion. Well, why? Because we eat, we need insulin depending on the size of the meal, right? And then we don't really need extra glucose coming in because we've just eaten. It can slow gastric emptying. Why would it be beneficial is the question. This is a big part of why it's beneficial, slowing gastric emptying. And that's where some of the side effects, the common side effects come from, which are nausea, abdominal discomfort, depending on how much you take. A lot of the time, a dose titration is used, so it's not necessarily taken to the full dose right away, it's titrated up. But people will definitely see nausea or adverse feeling towards food, I guess, if you will, when using it. And then it will lower or help control blood sugar, but that's mainly via the increase in insulin secretion. Side effects. Well, talked about potential nausea. The other is probably not a negative side effect, but that would be dulling kind of that dopaminergic response to food and to other things in general. So it's been observed that it will dull the response, a dopaminergic response, or balance it out, or reduce the want for these things. Central nervous system stimulants, food, any kind of really dopamine seeking activity, potentially anything that you chase to elicit that response, I suppose. I don't know whether you would call that a positive or negative response. Now, on paper, that may sound kind of scary because now it's making you very apathetic, which it certainly can, and again, dose dependent. That is a potential issue, especially when we're talking like contest prep dieting and things where you're already kind of apathetic and tired and don't have much of these responses other than you do probably have seeking behaviors because you are a bit depleted of dopamine or your nervous system is kind of stressed out. So it's kind of a double-edged sword in that regard. So potentially dulling you out too much depending on dose, depending on the person's environment and kind of what they're already kind of predisposed to. And does have potential neuroprotective benefits, especially in those that have dopaminergic type diseases like Parkinson's. They've used it, which obviously Parkinson's dopamine environment's entirely different than a person's dopamine environment without Parkinson's. So it's not, the neuroprotective ability is largely based on that environment. Balancing out glutamate levels, which go hand in hand with dopamine. So, there are potential neuroprotective benefits to it. There are potential behavioral benefits to it. There are potential downsides to those behavioral changes as well, depending on the person, depending on their environment, depending on what they are going through and what they've gone through. That's kind of the take on that. But, it can produce weight loss. You have increased glucose clearance, you have less appetite, you have less want for food, you have slower motility. So all of these things can certainly help in your weight loss efforts. Use in a person that is perhaps overweight simply because they overeat and they have difficult time with those habits, especially obese people, which tend to potentially have some leptin resistance, even though their leptin levels in theory should be very high because they're big. So they're in this perpetual this cycle that never ends of eating and wanting to eat even though they shouldn't want to eat. So for that type of population, could be hugely beneficial. Those that have some addicts, things like that. Whether or not it's a permanent solution or can be used long term, it's been used somewhat long term in studies, but it's only been FDA approved for 5 years or so. I guess we don't have the long term stuff yet, but that's kind of how it works. That's what it is. As I know, a lot of people are jumping on the bandwagon right now, so I just wanted everyone to have an idea of what it is, what the heck it does, and you can make an educated decision based on that, based on your own research, as to whether or not you think it is something that you potentially would benefit from. That's it for today, guys. I hope you all enjoyed the video.